Entering the FNAF theory space in 2026 is tough. In a franchise like this, it feels like every possible theory has been made, every mystery picked clean. But there's one little thread that I've never seen anyone really talk about, and I think we can use it to unravel FNAF 6. Pizzeria Simulator was not originally advertised as a traditional FNAF game. Scott's dedication to the misdirect went so far that he even made the game free. It starts off in one of his signature Atari-style minigames, though I don't have much to say about that, other than raising an eyebrow at the presence of Shadow Freddy in it. As the minigame crashes, we're abruptly booted to the salvage section for Scrap Baby. We're instructed by Henry to play some weird noises and document her response, shocking her if we notice movement.
Begin tape. Leaving dead space. 3, 2, 1. The purpose of this tape is to test automated response times and reactions from vintage interactive attractions following audio stimuli. If you are playing this tape, that means that not only have you been checking outside at the end of every shift, as you were instructed to do, but also that you have found something that meets the criteria of your special obligations under paragraph 4. Follow these instructions, document response times, then safely secure the space before leaving. Upon sealing the room, you are not to return. Begin audio prompt in 3, 2, 1. Document results.
In one of my favorite moments in the series, Baby ends the section by cutting off Henry, which he'll ironically do to her in his ending monologue.
Begin audio prompt in 3,
2, 1.
From there, the main Pizzeria Simulator daytime gameplay is available, followed by the traditional nighttime sections, with these salvage sections for each animatronic between nights in accordance with paragraph 4 of our contract with Henry to gather the animatronics together. But I don't think I've ever seen anybody talk about what's going on with the audio element of the salvage sections. The unsettling audio plus watch for subtle movements gameplay has been adapted by some fan works and such, but it doesn't get much attention otherwise. What is the in-universe reason for playing these weird audio snippets? While this may seem like an inconsequential topic to analyze, there is already lore in these sections that's been occasionally discussed. Each animatronic has a subtle, unique audio cue to signal that they are about to attack. Scrap Traps is a heartbeat. In the book continuities, William doesn't completely die inside Springtrap. The fourth closet actually has him able to remove most of the suit, and Baby uses sterile techniques to perform surgery on him. Scraptrap looks pretty dead though. He doesn't even have exposed flesh really, just bone and even a bit of his brain, which should have rotted away decades ago. But the Fazbear Fright story, The Man in Room 1280, makes Afton's survival explicit. It seems to tell an alternate version of Ultimate Custom Night, with a vengeful spirit trapping William in a nightmare coma rather than purgatory. Afton's charred body is hospitalized after the FNAF 6 fire. The doctors are baffled and horrified, because by all accounts he should be dead. But they can see his heart beating through the holes in his flesh. The doctors correctly surmise that this is some demonic nonsense, and justifiably break their Hippocratic oath to try to kill the abomination. But every time they try to kill him, a spirit manifests and blocks them. Afton is being kept alive by a ghost named Andrew who refuses to let him die so that he can suffer in eternal agony. Also, the Tales from the Pizzaplex story Frailty shows that Remnant has healing abilities, so that explains how William and also Michael aren't fully dead. So now that we've established that there is lore in the sounds the animatronics make, let's analyze the audio we play for the animatronics. Audio with strange properties is not a new concept in FNAF, although it's not from the games. Those familiar with the novel trilogy may remember the sound illusion discs. These devices emit a shifting, high-pitched frequency that overwhelms your subconscious with patterns, causing your mind to fill in details that aren't there, doing things like transforming untextured animatronic shells into the monstrous twisted animatronics. Despite a lack of concrete game representation, theorists latched onto these for a while, and they were the most popular explanation for the FNAF 4 nightmare experiments. After the release of Tales from the Pizzaplex story, Didophobia, people switched to using fear gas as their explanation, which is functionally the same and somewhat more realistic, but also less interesting in my opinion. Surprisingly, the illusion discs also make an appearance in the Tales story, Help Wanted. This story follows a game developer named Steve that Fazbear Entertainment hires to make the 4 in-universe FNAF games to downplay the company's shady past. As you can tell by the name of the story, these are the games referenced in FNAF VR. Fazbear Entertainment keeps him on their leash by moving him to a house and convincing him he has a fake life via dizzying illusions caused by devices emitting a high frequency. Sound familiar? While Tales Games was ultimately disproven by Secret of the Mimic, bringing the concept back after years of absence was interesting. These audio properties don't just affect humans, though. In the novels, Charlie repurposes a similar technology into an earpiece that makes you invisible to animatronics with the frequency it emits. So if sound frequencies can influence the animatronics, perhaps this is what the audio response tests are in FNAF 6, which was released around the same time as the novels. The audio itself is weird. I can almost hear a bit of the ambience from some of the earlier games in there.
Document results.
If these are distorted versions of audio tracks from FNAF 1 or FNAF 2, I can think of a couple reasons this could be, other than Scott just reusing an asset. It's possible that those early locations implemented sound discs. There was an old game theory where Matt Pat mentioned that there could be illusion discs in the lights at the FNAF 2 location. I was never big on the idea of hand-waving all the weird events in those games as just, oh, Fazbear put this crazy tech in all their buildings to make everything look better or to be evil or something. But it was worth mentioning. A more interesting reason is that these sounds may be comforting or familiar to the animatronics. FNAF 3, and more relevantly FNAF 6, both have the player utilize audio lures to distract the animatronics and keep them in other rooms. Springtrap chases the sounds of children, either because he can't resist the chance to kill a helpless child, or because he can't fight his suit's programming. FNAF 6 utilizes something called a RASC, or Remote Activated Simulated C, presumably child. This device simulates audio and even body temperature, which is rather unsettling. Henry does mention that Afton lured all the animatronics back together at one point, into a familiar place with familiar tricks, setting some kind of trap that robbed them of everything they had once again. It is commonly believed that this was the use of Shadow Freddy to disassemble the animatronics in the FNAF 3 Follow Me minigames, so that he could melt down their endoskeletons for Remnant. I've never really been satisfied with this since Shadow Freddy is so unexplained, though I'm not sure what other event Henry could be talking about. But I wonder if the lure William used could have been audio-based at some point, because I think Henry had the same idea. This ties into another thread of FNAF 6 that's been under-theorized, though at least it is discussed more than the audio response tests. Henry somehow attracted all the animatronics to the FNAF 6 location. When last we saw these characters, Springtrap was crawling out of the wreckage of the Fazbear's Fright, which the puppet was roaming the halls of before it burnt down. Ennard was crawling through the sewers around the sister location before kicking Baby out to become Molten Freddy. So how did all these animatronics wind up at Freddy Fazbear's pizza place? Well, we know how Henry got the puppet. Charlie was too smart to be tricked, and too dedicated to bringing Afton to justice to quit. However, the security puppet animatronic that she possessed was still programmed to seek out the frequency of the bracelet Henry had given his daughter to keep her under its protection. So Henry built Lefty to capture the puppet by designing it to broadcast the same frequency, then subduing her with electricity and music box lullabies. As for the others, perhaps he was broadcasting a different frequency to attract them, the strange audio from the salvage minigames. Scrap Baby says,
I heard your call.
So she might have meant it literally. She also taunts the player by saying,
You don't really know who your employer is, do you?
However, the player, Michael Afton, is well aware that Henry is his boss. Given how she taunts the player by saying we've fallen into her father's trap at the end, before being cut off by Henry informing her she's been deceived, I think Henry may have been impersonating Afton somehow. Amusingly, this doesn't deter arrogant Afton himself, who muses,
What a deceptive calling. I knew it was a lie the moment I heard it, obviously, but it is intriguing nonetheless.
Dude was so convinced that he always comes back that he intentionally walked into a trap just for fun. So, while Scrap Baby and Scrap Trap were coherent enough to maybe be lured in by words, Molten Freddy is a barely functional mass of souls and metal, so I think a frequency would be the most plausible way to lure him in. It's also worth noting that most of these animatronics probably didn't have to travel far. While later parts of the franchise imply that Fazbear has restaurants all over the country, earlier installments seem to keep everything more local. I'm a big fan of the interpretation of the Scrap animatronics roaming the streets of Utah as cryptids. There's also a theory called Fazburger that's been growing in popularity that states that most of the locations are just built on top of each other after the previous one burns down or closes. I enjoy this theory a lot, if for no other reason than the sheer comedy of Fazbear adamantly squeezing as much value as they can out of this plot of land that is now just insanely haunted. We can be pretty confident that the buildings from Sister Location and Pizzeria Simulator were close enough to be connected. We know that the Pizzaplex was built on top of the ruins of the FNAF 6 location. And descending deeper in, ruin, we see what appears to be the scooper from Sister Location in what's left of MCM, which gets even further reinforced in Secret of the Mimic, where we see that the underground facility containing the scooper was connected underground to a house on a hill, like how the Sister Location was connected to the FNAF 4 house. So basically, Henry's FNAF 6 location was above the underground facility that Sister Location took place in, meaning Scrap Baby and Molten Freddy were already just a block away. Plus, the prototype facility under MCM has a map of Fazbear Fright for some reason, meaning Springtrap and the puppet may have also literally been right in the neighborhood. So, bringing this all together, I think that Henry used the same strange audio from the salvage sections as a call to lure in the animatronics terrorizing the town. He may have been using the salvage sections to test and refine the audio, attracting more animatronics as the nights went on. Much like how the illusion discs distract the human mind to change an animatronic's appearance, these audio lures distract the animatronics so they don't see the trap they've fallen for until it's already snapped shut.